races, and I talked a lot about the races that are involved with the Illuminati, with the fallen angelics. And we've talked about Atlantis, and everything seems to be coming out of Atlantis, and these problems we have with these wormholes are coming from Atlantis. And for the people who haven't had any of the other courses before, I just wanted to show you this map. It is one of the ones out of that book. This is the map of what the continents looked like before the cataclysm of 28,000 BC, when the Atlantean continent got broken down into 3 island groups. In through here, up here, this little thing, it actually looks like kind of like the profile of a sea turtle. And this would be the flipper coming down, this would be the shell, that would be its tail, and this would be its head. And it actually used to be called Turtle Island. They referred to it as the turtle. This is why there's a lot of Native American legends that talk about life started on the back of a turtle, right, and this kind of thing. That there is a lot of the turtle affiliation with that. Over here, there was the other continent that was they call it Lemuria, but it was actually Maharavi. It was what it was called, and that got shortened to Mu, but it was Maharavi. And these 2 continents existed until this one went down in 50,000 BC. And it was because this one has something on it called Q Site 12, which is the activation site for Stargate 12. Stargate 12 is in France, at Montségur. And in 50,000 BC, one of the Jehovian races tried to invade, and they literally did certain things to blow up this landmass. So they would shred the gate connections, so you couldn't activate Gate 12, and they were successful at the time. Gate 12 has been repaired since then, but it's not been activated because the grids couldn't run D12 frequency. So over here, what we have left of what was Lemuria is we end up with the islands, the Hawaiian Islands, and then some of the more in the South Pacific islands. Right here is, this one is, I think I have to say, I can't read these too good because they're fuzzy. This down here was Easter Island. That is another important Q site. I believe it's Q Site 2 that goes with Stargate 2. Stargate 2 is off the coast of Siesta Key, Florida. Now when we come over here where this landmass used to be, and this was here until 28,000 BC, when another attempted attack ended up in creating, they're really photosonic pulses that they were using at that time. It's a combination of sound and light frequencies that were, it was a crystal-based technology. And there were certain attempts to take over gates that were made by running ley lines from here over into what's now Giza, Egypt area, because Giza, Egypt holds Stargate 4, and that's always been a prime area, because that's the, Stargate 4 connects to the solar gate, okay, in the sun, which is the one that goes from D3 into dimension 4. It's the crossover point from this harmonic universe into the next density level, so it's always been a prime target. Because they were playing with frequency the wrong way through the horizontal ley lines here, they ended up creating a disaster. They created it on purpose, where there are ley lines, axiotonal lines that run vertically through here. There's one somewhere right about here, axiotonal 1. Then axiotonal 7 comes down here. That's the one at 70 degrees west longitude. They ended up literally sinking parts of the continent, and it didn't just sink below the ocean. It sunk into the phantom Earth matrix that was already there from 5.5 million years ago. This is why there's hardly anything left under the ocean of what Atlantis is. It didn't only go underwater, it went down into the phantom matrix. It was literally sucked, the landmass was sucked into a black hole, which means it went up in a ball of fire, the waters came in over it, and then literally it's the parts of the matter base here that couldn't transmute turned into ash, and the rest of it went down and reassembled into the grids of Phantom Earth. So right now, where is Atlantis? Atlantis is alive and well in Phantom Earth, and that's in the Phantom Matrix. This is where these guys are coming from, a lot of them. They're trying to come back up. Atlantis rising, you know how that's kind of like a catchphrase in the New Age movement. That's what it's about. It's about them, the Atlanteans, and the whole thing coming back up. We're going to start seeing Atlantis again. Why? Because they're planning to pull the rest of us down in there with it, where it'll be visible again. You know, so it's more like Earth sinking rather than Atlantis rising. All right. What was left after the set of explosions that took place in 28,000 BC were these areas up here. They were called Lohas Atlantis. Down in here, which is now the Bermuda areas, they were called Nohasa Atlantis. And down in here was called Brua Atlantis. And there was literally like a land bridge that connected here and connected down and through here that that was lost later. Even after these were island nations, the Bermuda Islands were a lot bigger than they are now too. But in 9558 BC, when they purposely orchestrated, again, another cataclysm in order to bring more of it down into the Phantom Matrix, these areas got much smaller than they had been after the 28,000 BC thing. So this at least shows you that once upon a time, our maps looked like this. In these times, this wasn't very far away. This is where North America is now. Columbus didn't discover America. They knew it was there all along. And a lot of the races, the Illuminati races, the Illuminati were always structured in a way where one or two of them like people out of each group would have contact with, they'd either have channeling contact or they'd have direct physical contact with one of the fallen angelic groups. They'd be given information and told how much of it they were allowed to give to the next circle out. And then they would be told they could only give this much to the next circle out, to the point where you got like out here in the circles, where these guys had no idea, and they were just being directed by creeds they didn't even know what was at the center of. So the Illuminati races, they have come up out of here. They knew about, the ones at the top echelon knew that Atlantis existed. They in fact, once in a while, they'd even get a chance to see one of the real maps that showed where it was and this kind of things. But for the rest of people, it became legend, it became mythology. These were real places. At the same time, it wasn't just Atlantis that was inhabited. This place has been inhabited literally for millions of years, and there's been a number of cataclysms, several house cleanings. There's a period of time, I believe it went from like 70,000 BC, 75,000 BC, up to, it's in the timelines. I don't have these charts out. I won't even go back into that history now because I want to do current. But there was a long period of time, many thousands of years, where the angelic human 12 tribes were actually in exile, hiding, because the Anunnaki races from Nibiru had come in and taken over the planet. They hadn't got full control of the grids, and they hadn't got rid of humans, but they had come in and dominated the surface Earth, where humans literally had gone into underground civilizations, not in inner Earth, but literally beneath in caverns beneath the surface Earth. And there were long periods of time where, just to keep our races alive on the planet, that we lived in those type of conditions while they were running around on surface taking over everything. Over in this area was what we would call the U Empire. That was one of there were 5 primary races that were called Palladia Earthite Cloister races that started seeding 3 of the angelic human lineage. And the first, they had these groups, the names here go with them. This one was the U Empire, and they were over in this area that's now like China and everything. Down here it was called the Rama Empire. That's down in through India and spreading into some of the the Middle East. Over here we had 2 of the races. They were called the and the Brenoa races. And down in through here, up in through here, and over in the Lemurian area, you had the Iani and the Mua, which were the Moravi. They were the primary 5 races. The Iani were the High Council. They were the ones that came from inner Earth, the Indigo High Council, that came in and helped to set everything up here. They helped to reseed for seeding 3. So this was really what the world looked like in those days. So the information that we're giving you now, as far as wormholes, in Atlantis and everything, these were real places that we're talking about. There were real maps that showed what we have now, where it goes with that. So now that I showed you this, a lot of you have already seen it from Kauai and things, but for the people who hadn't seen it yet, these are the beginnings of the Atlantean maps, to at least show relationships of where were these continents. We know what happened to them now. Part of them got literally sucked down into the black hole matrix. The other parts, they're still going to find some things. There are going to be some things surfacing because of shifting that's going to be going down frequency-wise as more of the planetary grids activate, if things go well here. There will be things found beneath the oceans that right now literally aren't there to find yet. As we move into higher frequency, there's literally going to be more manifestation taking place. So there's a lot of discoveries that are going to be found if things progress well and it doesn't go in a cataclysm. It's going to be a very interesting period of 20 years past this point, because it will take us it will literally change all of the things we were taught about how reality is, because there will be things that are becoming apparent that show where what we were taught about reality was erroneous. It wasn't true. So we have things to look forward to, is finding parts of the evidence of these civilizations. Part of that's already happening. I've talked about, in Kauai, we talked a lot about the Nibiruan crystal temple networks. These are those things with the huge, massive selenite rods in them. And Leela actually got this lady here. It was so funny the way it was arranged. She came to one of our workshops, and right after that, she got invited to this expedition in Mexico. And they had just discovered this huge cavern with these awesome, massive, like skyscraper height almost, selenite crystal rods. And she brought pictures back, real pictures that she was there. She's standing underneath them, you know what I mean? And she brought them to the Kauai workshop. And it was interesting because she didn't know that I was going to teach about the crystal caverns. All right, the crystal networks that are the Nibirian crystal temple networks connect to an organic feature of Earth's body, which are called the crystal caverns. These are actually deep within the ground, particularly beneath a lot of the oceans and deep within the continents. There are crystalline tunnels and caverns that at certain parts of them, they have frequency modulation zones, which are portal passageways. If you have the right frequency in your DNA, you will be able to see where they are and be able to pass through them if you have the pass keys in your DNA. The crystal caverns, we started to, we had been given the information on them. We're doing a workshop on it. Wasn't even known that that was going to be part of it. She shows up at the workshop to attend the workshop with this whole book full of pictures of the crystals. It was like perfect synchronization. So the things are starting to be found. They said there's going to be 2 more. I think they said it was by 2002 or 3, there was going to be 2 more large networks like the ones that were just found in Chihuahua, Mexico. In other regions, they didn't say where they were going to be found, but they said there will be 2 more, and there's one of them that's amethyst, that actually, they're not all selenite rods. So there's going to be some interesting discoveries as we move along, as long as things stay stable enough where we have a chance to enjoy the discoveries. Okay? So this is Atlantis, or this was Atlantis, that was Lemuria, that was us, South America, Asia. And at least we still have, and it's kind of funny because in the Atlantean period, in my lifetimes there, in our simultaneous time, I have spent a lot of time in Lojas. That was kind of where I spent a lot of time as far as many of my simultaneous incarnations were in that area. And also over here in what had been Lemuria before it became islands. At least we have England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales left because they are a part of Atlantis. They are the part that remained visible. And there has been a whole big important thing of hiding things on maps. That as soon as they did the 9558 BC house cleaning here, literally things like maps that showed where parts of things were confiscated, and then false maps were evolved, and we were gently guided into creating this illusion of what we think was our history. We were helped all along to create the false history by having people having contact. Most of our history and our religious books were channeled. All right, that's the easiest way for them to communicate with people here from the Phantom Matrix. If they can get into your field, they can move part of their energy field, like pretend you have your astral body, it's like your ghost body, and you can move it over to the side. Well, you could put it in somebody else's body if you wanted to. This is how the distortions came most of the time in our history records, in our in the religious records, how they twisted books. The whole thing, there was at one point we released some of the story, and it's going to be released in not this book that's coming out, but the next one. The story of Moses in all of that. This was a riot. Galactic Federation was at the center of that one. I mean, part in the Red Sea and all this. Well, you could say God did it, if you want to call God Galactic Federation. All right? The things that have been attributed to God in our Bibles and in our holy books were not acts of God. That was, except, well, I guess they were. There was a truth to that. The Anunnaki groups are calling themselves our gods. And in that sense, yes, they were acts of those gods, but they're not our gods. When the walls of Jericho came tumbling down and Babylon was flattened and all those things, these were photosonic technologies that were used. These were things that actually had almost like ray guns, okay? They were physical technologies. They weren't some god saying, you were bad, so we're going to get rid of you. This was part of the war games. So at this point, we're faced with this huge revelation of history that kind of, when it started to come through and they were giving me layer after layer of this, I was just numbed, like watching the trade tower things. Just numb. Yeah, and I had enough incarnational memory open to know they were right. Because I remembered being in those times and I could never figure out how come I had these memories, how did they fit with this history that we're telling us? Because it didn't seem to fit. It made sense with what I knew inside. All of us have these memory banks. They're not active yet, but the more we work with DNA activation, the more we will get our memory of these times back. There's a part of each of us now, in the Atlantean period, in the Lemurian period. If we're here, it implies that we're also there, because it's simultaneous. When we incarnate, we come in simultaneously into 1,728 different time vectors. So we have 1,728 different selves, and that's if you're just human. That's if you have 12-strand pattern. If you're an indigo, you have lots more than that. Indigos you can look at, some have a 12-strand and another 12-strand. Some have 12, 12, and 12, and some have 12, 12, 12, and 12, with 1,728 that go with each one. Right? So those other selves of you exist right now with you. They're alive in their time frames, like you are, and they're a part of your avatar consciousness. When you get to be fully an embodied avatar, you will know yourselves as all of those selves. Your concept of self expands. You'll realize that, yeah, I had that body form there, I'm manifesting in that body form there, and I have these purposes in this part of my life. You all of a sudden you realize yourself is beyond body form, that has the ability to put yourself into multiple body forms at the same time. So it's a whole new level of revelation of self when you start to get into this space. What's good about this, the fact that we're connected to our other time selves, is we can help each other in times like this. They know, some of them are in more advanced cycles where they're not as repressed as they are here. In the inner earth, we have incarnations in those time cycles. It's a different time matrix, literally, that interfaces with our own, that creates the inner earth time cycles. There are selves of us there. They're the ones that are sending the information to us here to help us to get out of this predicament, because if we get stuck, they get stuck. So there's this huge support system. We can get scared sometimes if we look around and think, God, we're all alone with this, and we're just learning this knowledge, and it's a tiny little group, and there's a whole bunch of groups that are not going to want to deal with this stuff, particularly if they're dealing with anybody on that list that I had up first. If you start to realize that you're not alone here and you never were, it's really helpful because you have a support team with you. They're in other time frames, but times aren't far away. They're actually taking place in the same space. The only thing making you separate from your other time selves is the axis on which your particles are rotating. That is it. All right, angular rotation of particle spin allows multiple different reality fields and matter fields to take place in exactly the same space, but be imperceivable and invisible to each other, where they literally pass through each other. So yourselves are very close, and it can help to know that. It can help to draw on that. Or if you realize that you're here as part of a team, what would look like a team? If you got all of yourselves into this time continuum, you'd have quite the party. You'd have at least 1,728, and possibly 4 times that, and that would just be you. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I remember, but my first thought was, oh God, I wouldn't want to have to figure out what to wear in the morning. It's hard enough with one body. Yeah. All right.